Times kids have been lied to on paternity court.
Is not your biological father. Help her.
Can you imagine how hard it is to grow up not knowing what's right and what's wrong? Can you imagine what it's like walking across the stage and your parents is not there?
Gower wasn't ready to silence his voice now. After 16 years of living without a father, he finally went to his deadbeat father, Mr. Ducasse, to prove to him that he was his son. After the plaintiff's mother's tragic death, he desperately wanted answers today.
You say after your mother's tragic death, you were told by your grandmother that Mr. Ducasse is your dad. It has been more than 16 years since you laid eyes on the man you believe is your father.
Yes, Your Honor.
When the defendant walked in, he silently went up to the podium and didn't even look at his alleged son. Mr. Ducasse acted completely unaware of his presence, and the judge also noticed it.
You say you are certain that you're not the plaintiff's biological father, and you claim you had a one-night stand with Mr. Gower's mother, and she was in a long-term relationship with another man, and that he is the biological father.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Gower was given a chance to speak first. What do you think he had to say at this moment? Only sad incidents and the feelings of a child that had an absent father. There's not much more we expected. The plaintiff started the testimony by explaining his struggles in life.
This is an emotional moment for me. The fact that for 24 years of my life, not having no mother, losing her when I was 4 years old, and then the fact that my father just stranded me, knowing the pressure that I'm gonna have to deal with by myself, of not being there for me, it hurts me.
See, I told you that only sadness would follow here by his words. He's lucky to have his grandparents to raise him. Then, it was time for Mr. Ducasse to testify, so the case could move forward.
She wasn't sure if it was me or the other person that was involved.
If you wasn't, excuse me, Leroy, why did you name him Sanchez after your best friend?
Whoa, Grandma pulled a really good point here. Why give a dear name to a baby when you had to deny it? Also, according to her, their heads are the same, so we can't call her wrong. Then, the defendant told them about their relationship.
She was in a 2-year standing relationship, and she made it real clear to me. We only had one encounter, of which I used a withdrawal method. So actually, to speak honestly, I've never, fully...
You said you just had a one-night stand.
Yes. I tried to basically just be there for her.
So, here comes the doubt problem in this case. Also, these one-night stands have had one thing in common. Men never believe babies could be born from them. Then the plaintiff asked him, looking into his eyes, why he never confronted paternity.
At the time when your mum was alive, I was going to do it, but I didn't know...
That is no excuse.
Wait, hold on. When your mum passed, I didn't even get informed by your family. I didn't get invited to the funeral.
You don't
Guess
get
what
invited
happened?
to a
Stop
funeral.
Stop it. A friend of mine called me and told me that on the news.
My family member
Stop it.
at the church
Hold
that
on,
you...
hold on.
No, they did not.
So, he showed laziness regarding paternity, which you should never do because it's such a big matter to resolve. But the plaintiff's mother's death made things worse, and grandparents should have done better in this case. Then, Mr. Ducasse further explained his testimony.
With a 2-year long-standing relationship, right? I was like, what you could say, irresponsible or diminished, my obligation. At the time, I was adamant to the fact that there was no premises that could substantiate or validate any merit towards me being Sanchez's father.
Okay, so he had a one-night stand with his mother, never tried to learn about paternity, and then just went with his intuition that he could never be the father. Well, these things are that much easier, mister. Then, Mr. Gower exposed the defendant that he always stayed detached from them.
My grandparents found you, they invited you over, and they welcomed you. You told me, call me dad.
No.
Did you not?
Apartment. Yes, you did,
Did you
Leroy.
not?
No, I don't remember that at all.
And when he did give us his number, I was 10 years old. I wanted to call him because I had a little event at my school, and I wanted him to come to the program. Called, disconnected.
Oh, so they tried to have him in Mr. Gower's life, but look what happened. Instead of a little support, he got abandoned by his alleged father when he was just a kid. Man, that's gotta be tough for him. Then the plaintiff reflected on his life.
I try to stay strong, and sometimes it's real hard. That's why I want to major in child psychology. I hate seeing young kids go through stuff like this. How can men have sex with women, get them pregnant, and then just leave them and put a toll on that child when this child didn't ask to be here? Nobody would never understand how these children feel.
Now, Grandma stepped in and shared that it was crushing to lose her only daughter. She also said to the defendant that after her daughter's death, they might have appeared bitter towards him, but they were never mean to him. And the plaintiff also shared his feelings with Mr. Gower.
Could you handle being in my shoes? Your mother not in your life, and then your father leaving you. Could you imagine how hard it is for you to avoid the streets? Can you imagine how hard it is to grow up not knowing what's right and what's wrong? Can you imagine what it's like walking across the stage and your parents is not there?
The hurt and resentment of 16 years was very hard to carry for Mr. Gower, and now it was time to face the truth and find his real father so he could form a new bond with Mr. Ducasse. And the results were announced.
You are the father.
Lord have mercy, Jesus.
Tensions are rising for this mother. Miss Moore hasn't seen her son in 2 months. What happened between them? Well, according to her, a lifelong secret of an affair has been revealed to her son, creating a wall between the mother and son. So today, they want to know the truth.
29 years ago, I had an affair between 2 guys. I didn't tell my son.
Jerome, if you could please escort Mr. Weeks in, please.
This is not gonna work good.
The plaintiff said that at about 9 years old, he started hearing from a family that Mr. Maurice wasn't his father and was confused with a suspicious mind. He always asked his mother, but she never told him the truth, and he trusted her words. But the defendant claimed that her son never asked this question.
If my son had asked me, I would have told him, but I would have also told him not to say anything because I didn't want my mother to know.
So you were reluctant just because you didn't want your mother to reject him.
My mother has rejected my daughter. I didn't want another child rejected. A child out of wedlock was not going to be accepted by her.
Ooh, there's a lot to unpack here. Before we can blame her, she has her problems. So Mr. Weeks said that he was in a store when a family member met him and asked about his father. And there's where he got suspicious.
Brought my phone out, called him right on the spot. As soon as he got on the phone, he said, "Oh, my bad, I got the wrong number." He gave me back the phone. So I stood back.
Basically, he was implying Maurice wasn't your father.
Right. I came through the door, talked, then I just came after. Just plain blank, you can't lie to me no more. I can't hear that Maurice Weeks is your father.
That was a very awkward moment. It must be eating him inside to know about his doubt after so many years of his life. Then, the defendant said she asked her son, but he didn't tell her anything until 2 months ago.
He came into town. I didn't even know my son was coming into town. He came out with it. I told him. I didn't know. I don't know. Had he asked me at 9, if he had asked me at 3, if he had said anything at 18 when he graduated, yes, I still would have told him. I went to Maurice. I asked Maurice, don't you think it's about time we let Earl know?
Oh, the situation is becoming bad and worse every time they testify. She has a solid point. What could she do when there was a chance her family could break apart? Then the defendant said she slept with 2 guys within 2 days, and doubt became stronger when she noticed that her son didn't resemble Mr. Maurice and expressed despair.
I am not the only one that didn't tell my son, and if I known that at the time that Earl would have been that much raised a few months ago, Lord in heaven knows I would have told my son regardless. Only thing I didn't want to happen was my mother to find out.
Miss Moore had her problems going on, and what she did was best for her son. But still, she should have been honest with her son. Then the judge called Mr. Weeks' fiancée, Miss Walker, to testify on the matter.
It has been frustrating for not only Earl and I, but it has also been frustrating for my 2 children. We have a son and daughter together. Ever since he's been going through this thing with his mother months ago when he found out, he's been distant with her, he's been distant with me, he's been distant with our children.
Look how his secret just affected all 3 of their lives. At this point, it's hard to take any sides, but no one is right and wrong at the same time. and the judge also took Miss Moore's side this time.
I didn't grow up in this era, but I remember the generation before me. If a young person got pregnant, they'd go off down south or somewhere for a year. I don't know if any of you remember that. Then they just disappear. They come back, they're not pregnant no more, and the next thing you know, where's the baby? Who knows? It'd be with another family member who would have gotten adopted. Everything was secret.
This case was just a roller coaster of emotions and helplessness. A mother's love and protection for her son turned against her, and she could get away with it. Now, after all the secrets had been revealed, it was time to know whether Mr. Maurice's DNA matched the plaintiff's.
The man who has raised you for the past 29 years is not your biological father. Help her.
Mr. Taylor is facing the court, and two different kids, Mr. Moore and Miss Everett, from separate mothers, have come here to claim their rights against the defendant. Let's see how this twisted case gets to the end.
Mr. Moore, you claim you've known Mr. Taylor for most of your life.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Everett, you say you weren't even introduced to Mr. Taylor until you were 5 years old. Then you claim you didn't see him again until you were sent to live with him.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Taylor, you say you deny paternity of both plaintiffs, and you have good reason with each.
That's correct.
The case started with Mr. Moore, who said he was left in foster care and grew up without his parents at the age of 14. He knew Mr. Taylor was his father and cried that he wouldn't be illiterate if someone was there for him. Then, the defendant testified on this matter.
I wasn't sure that this was my son.
You still
I
can find out,
honestly didn't know. All of a sudden, he's your son, he's your son, he's your son. No, Your Honor, I didn't know. So I went and I did a little investigating, and I do have a birth certificate that my name's not even on it.
Then Mr. Taylor added that his mother was very promiscuous, and the birth certificate both made him doubt the kid. But Mr. Moore showed evidence that he resembled him. Then the defendant shared the information he had for this pregnancy.
She came and told me she was living with me. She left and she went back to her man or whoever she was, the relationship she had. A month later, she says, you know I'm pregnant. You know what I mean? You done went back with the guy that you left to be with me. Now you're coming back and you're telling me that you're pregnant?
Surely after 1 month of living with another guy, no one will own your kid. Even if he didn't believe the kid could be his, he should have helped a little. Then, Mr. Moore's witness, his aunt, gave her testimony on his mother.
My sister told me that Mr. Taylor could not be the father. I guess when she got pregnant, she was also sleeping with other gentlemen. And also, I've seen gentlemen come out of her house.
Why would your sister go to him and tell him Mr. Taylor is your biological father?
I can't speak on that.
So, this doesn't make any sense. First, you tell the man that he's the father, and then you tell him that he's not. Why do women do this? Do they not know that a kid's life would be affected by this? It was no use asking more questions, so the judge read the results.
You are his father.
I'm feeling that I finally know instead of doubting for all these years. I could have been in his life so much earlier if I wouldn't have let situations and people talking to me interfere with what I had to do as far as being a father.
Moving to the next plaintiff, Miss Everett said that she grew up without a father, and at 5 years old, she first met Mr. Taylor. He told her they would meet again, but he disappeared after that, and she only met him again at the age of 14. Then the defendant shared his doubts.
The way that I met her mother, the relationship that I had with her mother, which was a very brief relationship, her mother lived with me for a month. And I didn't see her no more, and then the next time you see me, you got a baby and you saying it's mine. I was incarcerated. I was gone for 5 years.
Again, a promiscuous woman. 1 month relationship ending up with a baby. I thought her story would be different. Nope, but it's the same. Then Miss Everett said that she had no father figure in her life and shared the encounter she had with the defendant years later.
His father gave me his number. I called him and said I'm at the bus station. He came and picked me up, took me to the same woman's house with his daughter, treated me, neglected me, didn't enroll me at school, didn't buy me school clothes, he didn't buy me sneakers, he didn't buy me school supplies.
I'll go up to the school, she's playing hooky.
She could have played a better mother, but she never bothered and only made her daughter's life difficult. After his denial, which seems very true, Miss Everett argued that there were 2 people on her birth certificate and the state told that it was an error.
Do you have that birth certificate
When I
copy?
went to apply for my birth certificate again, the system's changed in Philadelphia. So you got to apply for it, then you got to go back and pick it up. They don't do it same day thing. So that's why I don't have the birth certificate with me today. But
Have you
that's why I
ever
don't
seen
even
this
think
birth
of-
certificate?
I've never seen it. I don't know nothing about it.
First, her mother's actions, then Mr. Taylor's abandonment, and on top of that, birth certificate confusion. All these things sure had damaged Miss Everett's life. And now, to know the truth, it was time for the results.
You are her father.